My name is Ashley Rippey. I'm the Executive Director of the Business Career Center. Thanks for coming out today to our first professional development event of the semester. If you haven't engaged with our office yet, I do encourage you to do that, especially if you think you're in the internship search or full-time job search process for the fall semester. Career fairs do start next week. So what we're going to talk about today is networking and informational interviewing. I think all of us have at least a concept of what networking means. Informational interviewing is maybe some terminology we've not heard of before. So I want to get a feel for who's in the room. How many of you are freshmen? Quite a few. I like that. Good. How about sophomores? Any juniors? Good. Any seniors? Okay. This is good. A nice diverse bunch. So I'm going to go over very briefly what networking is and isn't, talk a little bit about what informational interviewing is and some do's and don'ts, and then we're going to open it up to our lovely panelists here. They're going to introduce themselves more deeply in a moment, but we have Mike, who's an alum of SMEAL, class of 2003. We have Emma, who's a current student, sophomore in SMEAL, and we have Lily, who's a senior in SMEAL. So they're going to share their expertise, their tips and tricks when it comes to networking. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but after I give this very brief presentation, the responsibility for the content is on you. You all came here because you have interest in how to do this. So I'm assuming you have some questions. So if you don't have questions, it's going to be pretty painful if we're staring at one another, right? So without further ado, let's talk about what networking is. John's an alum as well. John's joining us.
Hello.
Perfect. I'm going to have you introduce yourself more deeply in a little bit. So what is networking? It's not about the quantity of contacts. It's about quality. How many of you are on LinkedIn? A lot of us. Here's what I hate about LinkedIn. That little number next to your picture shows how many contacts you have. I think a lot of us are seeking that 500 plus number. What does that really mean? I have 500 plus contacts. Do I know each of those people individually? Right? Look at your Instagram followers. Do you know those people? Connection. It's about quality, not about quantity. So remember that. I think sometimes if you keep that in perspective, that will make the networking process seem a lot less overwhelming. You're not trying to be all things to all people and be in all places. It's about strategically managing very close quality relationships. Networking is really just socializing within a professional context. You all socialize every single given day, whether that's in class, part of your student organizations, with your friends, with your faculty, your advisors, people on our team at the Business Career Center. You know how to socialize. You would not have gotten this far if you were incapable of carrying on a human conversation. That's all networking is. It's just about storytelling and asking questions and having good conversation. It's obviously making a good impression. That's that additional little context, right? And we'll talk about some do's and don'ts there. But it's also about having realistic expectations. How many of you have been told it's all in who you know? You know the right people, you get the job. Have you heard something like that before? Okay, to a certain extent, there's some truth in there. Absolutely, it certainly pays to know people. It pays to build those relationships. But if that's all you're doing, you're relying on that one person. Dad's best friend works at Goldman. I'm in, I'm set. It requires work, hence the work in networking. It requires intentionality. It requires planning, preparation, and putting that best foot forward. So it's not the be-all, end-all. It's important, but it's not the only piece of the pie. I think that's really important. Networking is not cold calling a professional or doing a cold reach out on LinkedIn. Again, trying to amass all those hundreds, 500 people into your network, thinking that that's going to be the kingpin to help you get the job you're looking for. It's also not asking for a job, right? That is probably, I'm going to say probably, the reason why you're networking, but that's not what you're leading with. It's a very much a two-way process. You need to be able to do something for that person you're speaking with before they're willing to assist you in getting a job. And oftentimes, networking is not making small talk in a room full of people wearing suits. I think that's a little bit of a misconception. Sometimes it is. I put that. You'll see oftentimes if there's a networking session here in the SMEAL College of Business, we've got the high top tables, you have some appetizers, and a lot of people in suits going around shaking hands and exchanging business cards. And when I was a student here at Penn State, That absolutely positively terrified me. How do you know how to enter and exit the conversation? You don't want to disrupt people who are having an engaged conversation. When do you know to interrupt if you've entered that conversation? How do you make connections? How much is too much to talk? Too little to talk, right? What do you do with your hands if you're holding food and you're trying to shake hands and then you're eating with the same hand? Is that proper or improper? So it's kind of an awkward social situation. It's not always like that. Unfortunately, because here we're trying to bottle up a lot of career experiences, employers are coming here to campus and trying to get the most bang for their buck. They're kind of creating these artificial environments to help networking happen. When you're out in the real world, like John and Mike, things don't usually happen like that. They're a little bit more authentic and natural. Maybe you guys can elaborate on that later. All right. Tips for networking, pretty global stuff. Pretty good advice for life in general. Being yourself is really important. I have a lot of students panic about career fair setting as well. What am I supposed to say in my pitch? What do they want to hear? What's the right answer to this in an interview? If you're worrying about what the right answer is, you're not being authentic to yourself, which means it's the wrong answer. Now, if yourself is someone who curses, makes inappropriate gestures, then we have a problem. But outside that, be yourself. Be the best version of yourself, but be yourself. Know what your goals are for networking, which really goes to the questions you're trying to ask. So the goal of networking should be to seek advice, not to actually land the job. So you have to know, what are you trying to understand? Are you trying to understand an industry, a function, a long-term career path, how you can become attractive for that long-term career path, what types of experiences you might get here that give you a glimpse into that career path? What do you need to know? So maybe you're an accounting major and you decided you don't want to go down that CPA route. What are my other options, right? There are a lot of things that you can ask and explore, but you need to know what that is before you start reaching out to people and you seem a little bit disorganized. You have to have a mission. And it's really important to stay in touch. I get this question a lot. So I developed a really good contact when I was in an old role at a different institution. I worked in college admissions for a liberal arts school not far from here. And I was up at a college fair in Maine representing that school. I had all my stuff laid out on the table. And a gentleman from across the way came over and he had a Penn State tie on and introduced himself as the VP for marketing at Penn State. I didn't notice the tie at first. So we started chatting a little bit, got to know him, really liked him, and I finally said, well, what school are you representing? He looked at his tie and said, well, Penn State. So I'm an alum, right? So we started talking, kept in touch with him because it was my goal to get back to the university as an employee. So what did I reach out with? Well, we were in the same field. So I was sharing interesting things about the industry, what was happening within higher education, marketing. It was a very interesting time in higher ed because that's when you started to hear a lot about student loan debt. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. For me professionally, I was fresh out of grad school. So I was learning a lot in my young career. So I was sharing career development successes that I was having. Asked him a little bit about his travel plan since we had the same recruitment territory and checked in here and there. Happy Thanksgiving, whatever it is. It's not inappropriate to reach out and do those things. How appropriate is inappropriate and not enough and too much? We'll talk about that with our panel, I'm sure, and they'll have good examples of that. Last thing, where can we network? Company events. So if you've not seen on our Business Career Center page, we do have a calendar of events. That same calendar also exists within an Inline Career Network with some additional details if you're looking to connect with companies. So PwC had a barbecue today. Yeah, there was food there, but that's a networking event. Very casual setting. Information sessions, case competitions, all of those are opportunities for you to display your brand, network, make some connections, and get some advice. I have this note up here, this FYI, applicant tracking systems. Who knows what the heck that is? Anybody know what that is? So here's a little kind of off the beaten path thing that doesn't necessarily have to do with networking, but it ultimately leads to the same goal. So every time you interact with a company, most companies are using something known as an applicant tracking system. So the first time you engage with them, they're creating you as an account in their system. So maybe the first time you engaged with PwC was today at the picnic, the barbecue. They're creating that account, saying, positive interaction with Sarah, great chat about her future career insurance, really like where she's going, only a sophomore, checking with her again. You go see them next week at Mega Fair. You get another little checkbox in the system. Met Sarah again at Mega Fair, super impressive, like her poise, like her confidence and attitude. You then go to their session with Women in Business that evening, their info session. You get another little check mark. Guess who tends to get the job at the end of the recruitment cycle? I see you shaking your head. Who gets the job?
The one who has a lot of check marks.
Person with the most check marks. That's how it works, right? So you want to make yourself known at these networking events. But how else can you network? Professors, I know a lot of us think they're big, scary people at the front of the room. They're really not. They got into doing this because they generally like what they do, right? So certainly utilize professors, especially here at Penn State, even though we're a Research One institution, most of our faculty have worked in industry. They have connections, they have contacts, 100%. Friends and family, obviously, I have a lot of students who say, well, I don't want to go back and work for my uncle's company, even though it's relevant, because, it's just my uncle's company, just. If it's a legitimate experience, let's really look at that there. Mind those relationships. Professional associations and student organizations, I think, go without saying. Something a little bit more formal. Do we have anyone in here who's part of the SMEAL Alumni Mentoring Program? 2 people. Good. Do you want to say anything about that experience?
We just started. So
You're brand new for the year?
Yeah.
You didn't do it last year. Okay. So the SMEAL Alumni Networking Program, the last I heard, there were about 400 alums of SMEAL who said, I want to take on a protege. And so they have a really nice homegrown tool that will actually match mentors with mentees based on career goals, interests, and industries. And then there's a formalized structure, a coaching program around that mentor-mentee relationship for the entire year. You can do it multiple years. You will get a new mentor each year, because the idea is you're probably going to continue working with the people you previously met with. So let's give you a new person each year so you develop more relationships across more industries. You do have to have at least 1 semester of experience at Penn State before you can apply. So for my freshmen in the room, you cannot apply until the spring. But if you're a sophomore, a junior, or a senior right now, they are still taking applications if you're interested. So I do have the website up there. It's just smeal.psu.edu/mentoring. Okay. The last thing is, many of us were on LinkedIn. How many of you have used the Find Alumni tool? Do you know what that looks like? Okay, good. So the Find Alumni tool, if you search Penn State in the search bar on LinkedIn and go to alumni, you'll see there's currently almost 377,000 active Penn State alumni on LinkedIn. A lot of people and a lot of information. But you can search specific companies and geographical locations. So if you know you want to be in sales in New York, what Penn State alums live in New York and do sales? What companies are they at? And then you can actually reach out and start building that network. Or if you know you want to be at Google specifically, well, who works at Google? I graduated from Penn State. You can find all that information. What do you say and how do you reach out and how often can you and should you reach out? That's something we'll talk about with our panel. So that's the entire presentation I have. So before I give the floor to you, do you have any immediate questions or concerns? Networking in a nutshell, some do's and don'ts. Okay, without further ado, I'll stop this here. I'm going to turn things over to our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves, please.
Cool. I'm John Peterson, graduated from SMEAL 2003, degree in marketing. I'm currently the director for the Small Business Development Center here on campus for Penn State.
I feel like I should have known John. I also graduated from marketing in 2003.
Really?
Yeah.
We're like one of the few guys.
I live in
Yeah.
town now.
Yeah.
Spent the majority of my career in healthcare sales. I'm currently a VP of sales for McKesson. I led a sales operations team that was private equity owned that got sold to McKesson about a year ago. So it's been an eventful couple of years, but love Penn State. Have 2 boys that play hockey for school all the time, so I'm on campus. There's no spot I'd rather be. Appreciate you guys being here and enjoyed the content, agree with the content. Looking forward to supporting you guys however I can.
I'm Emma. I haven't graduated from Penn State yet. I'm a sophomore. I am majoring in marketing and Spanish, and I'm from Pittsburgh.
Hi everyone, my name's Lily. I am a senior. graduating now in 2020. I am a marketing major with a minor in psychology. I interned my sophomore year with PepsiCo in Brazil, actually, because I am from Brazil. And then this past year, I interned with Target for a branding internship. Yeah, I know.
We're just chock full of marketing today. This is nice.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I was interested in hearing from the alumni some of the networking events you've been to that have been most effective for you, or that you felt were most effective for the wellness meeting.
I'm just going to repeat the question for those that are viewing via Facebook or Zoom. So for the alumni, which were the most effective networking events, just to kind of boil that down a bit?
I go to different conferences, or you could go to a chamber event. Again, you kind of have a little bit of a pitch. You introduce yourself. You might say, hey, here's my business card, exchange of what you do. And your pitch is just going to be probably one sentence or two sentences, what it is, and just kind of create that dialogue interaction. Understand what the commonality is with the other individual that you're interacting with. So I think, when you're at conference, it's very specific. Maybe you're in the same industry or trying to get the same type of content, and there's always problems and solutions. So, my friend over here might have a problem. I might have a solution, might talk about that, or maybe we're dealing with the same common thing, and we start doing information sharing. So that's one common thing that I'll see, whether it's chamber mixers, interacting with our state faculty, or going through other people in the industry.
Yeah, networking for me has evolved a little bit, and admittedly I should do more of this than I do on you guys' behalf. I'd love to help. Networking in my world is a lot. If we have a national meeting where we're bringing all 3,000 sales reps that we have together, and we have a lot of manufacturers that are supporting that, so we distribute product that they make. They're there to make sure if we're selling something, we're selling their product. You're interfacing with a lot of people at those events. You're getting a feel for what they do. You're getting a feel for a business that either you want to work with or potentially work for, depending on what your situation is, and you're forging some of those relationships that you'll leverage either for business reasons or for career reasons down the road. So I think networking will take a lot of different forms. I 100% agree with Ashley that it's not necessarily buttoned up cocktail hours. I don't think, for me, there's a huge preference when I'm meeting somebody that's interested in exploring a career. I hope that they have fun. I hope they do things that they enjoy outside of work. I don't care that they wear t-shirts. I wear my shorts a lot. Working from a home office, that's okay, as long as the story ties. So anything that you do on social media, anytime that you're a networking event, could be a Medlar field, or it could be in a suit in a formal setting.
Yeah.
So
and you're out in the wild. I think that's the biggest thing, is out in the wild means we could be walking down Main Street, having dinner with a group of friends. There's someone that newly introduced, and you kind of find out, what's in their world, what's in their environment. You share about what your environment is. You start the interaction. Again, you're obviously made at Penn State, so you're obviously smart, bright. Again, it's a lot of the soft skills that come in. It's this common connection. Really look people directly in the eye, good handshake. Again, just that one-to-one interaction out there. And again, how do you kind of break the ice, right? Because sometimes it's uncomfortable for us to do that. So again, you kind of figure out what's an easy opening line. You can talk, you can do the small talk and stuff, but then try and get some specifics. Again, just say, hey, what do you do? How was your day? And then you can drive to another layer. It's kind of like an onion. You just take it layer after layer, and you just peel one layer at a time.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
So for like career fairs as freshmen, how do you think that we make the most out of career fair? So if you don't really have a downtown resume, you don't have that much to offer.
I think the main thing is, like Ashley was saying, many times recruiters actually have a record of who was there their freshman year. So I've been to the career fair since my freshman year, and usually what I approach with as a freshman is, they're not recruiting for freshmen, so that for a fact, but you can be like, hi, I'm a freshman, I just want to get my feet in the door, and I want to know what are you looking for when you're thinking of internships. I ask more for advice than for actually a job or something like that just because you're a freshman. But at the same time, like she said many times, they keep record. So your sophomore year, your junior year, you go back and you talk to the same company, they're gonna have the record that you were there your freshman year. So for them, it's like, oh wow, like he was interested since freshman year for this company. And it kind of like, the way I see it for recruiting, it's always just like, it's like kind of like an escalator. It goes up. Like you start your freshman year and you start building it again and again. So even I don't know if you join an organization and you talk to a recruiter once and you're like, oh, I'm a freshman, I'm not gonna get anything out of it. I can assure you, sometimes life surprises you, and that recruiter you met your freshman year, you meet them again junior year, and that's the person who like hires you at the end. Like you never know. So the way I would say is like, look for advice if you go to a career fair as a freshman. And they're keen to like be interested in somebody who's like really trying to learn more, and they'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did last year, and I plan to go into the career fairs, like meeting with the same people and telling them, oh, I came last year, couldn't get an internship, but I'm excited to try again this year.
I'll supplement that too. I will say for freshmen and sophomores, anything you did in high school that was a leadership experience, a significant activity in your life, it's fair game on your resume and in a pitch conversation. That's what you have to go on now. Now, sophomores, I hope we're starting to build Penn State experiences. The high school stuff is still fair game. I'll also say this. I had a student in my intro to Penn State, the Penn State 6 class last year, who I require my class to go to mock career fair. She was completely horrified, terrified, all the negative things you can think of, because she had no idea what she was going to share. And what she ended up going with, sort of accidentally, but that worked for her, is she talked about her passion for sailing. She was a competitive sailor in high school, and that was an interest she was hoping to continue here at Penn State. And she went up and started talking to one of the recruiters at the accounting firms, and that person she was speaking with, as luck would have it, was a Penn State grad who had been involved with the sailing club here. That is all they talked about. So she was able to keep in touch with that person and build that personal connection just by talking about a personal interest. So there's value in sharing those things too.
I would also recommend, I mean, if you're a freshman, right, you're in a 3 to 4 year game around what the end game is. You're going to graduate from here. You want to land in the spot that makes sense for you. So use those early years to really learn and get some context. If I look back at my time when I was in your chair, and then 3 years, even fast forward to when I was a senior, did I develop as much knowledge as I could have? Probably not. Where for you, I can give you a couple data points as to what it's like to be a sales guy for 15 years. But some of the questions you could ask me if I'm on the recruiting side of that is, if I'm an accounting major, I'm a marketing major, what roles within your company do you see those degrees go to? And I can give you a whole bunch of context around what a Fortune 4, 60,000 employee company that's domestic and international looks for, hires for, what roles they are. And I suspect some of those roles aren't roles that are going to be intuitive around, oh, I didn't know healthcare companies had those type of positions. That's of interest to me. And then you can leverage that in conversations when you're a junior, senior, getting more prescriptive around what that next step would be.
Yeah, I think one of the questions for prep, you kind of talk about what you should do when you go in, is have a plan. You know, prep yourself and be ready and look at what industry that you want to focus in, focus on the names that are going to be at the career fairs, and understand maybe a little bit more, do some customer discovery in a way, and that is really company discovery, and understand, you know, how's the business work, talk to the key ones that you want to talk to. So maybe you have a list of your top 7. These are the 7 people or businesses that you want to talk to that day. Then find out how do they relate to those industries that you want to go into and get that. And again, just like you said, you know, they have their CRM or whatever type of software where they log you, will log in as hopefully as a freshman, and you can gain. And also you can say, you know, I can't, you know, I know you probably won't, you know, look at me as getting a job today or internship, but what type of other internships that maybe I could do back at home or through other people, or, you know, what are you looking for in a resume as I build it for the next 3 years at Penn State?
I would also add that I think it's like very beneficial to go as a freshman because you also like lose that fear. I feel like learning how to network well, it's a skill you need to develop, and no one as a freshman has that because you've never done it before. So if you go as a freshman where you don't have as much pressure as, like, for example, like as a junior, like you're always like, oh, I really need an internship. This is like game on, time to do it. When you're a freshman, you don't have that yet. So I would take like that pressure off and have like that like building that courage and really like losing that fear that like we all have. Like we don't really know how to talk to recruiters yet. So I think it's great just to go too, because you build that skill since the beginning. So when you go your junior year, you're all set. You've done this before. It's nothing new, and you know exactly what to say.
Good advice. I think there was a question in the back.
Yeah, so you talked about how like using high school experience as a freshman, sophomore in college are good to show recruiters. But I was going to ask if you wanted to also show that you had a trend starting from high school and continuing through college. Is there a point where those high school achievements become antiquated, or is it still okay to use those if you're trying to prove that there's been, say, a leadership trend in your life, starting from high school up through college? Is that okay to still have that to show progression and growth?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that from a resume standpoint. There's only so much room on your resume, right? So our recruiters tell us that they want to see 1 page. That's it. So you're probably going to run out of real estate at some point. But I think certainly if your brand is being a leader in student government, you've been a leader since 8th grade, you were the treasurer of your 8th grade class, and you just kept on going, and that's kind of on brand for you, use that in your communication. It's going to be a little harder to show on a resume because of the real estate situation. But for sure, think about that brand. What does that communicate, that momentum you're talking about?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're in leadership programs or you're in some type of branded program as a high school student, use those. A lot of times they have some brand equity to them. Sometimes they're state, regional, nationwide. Promote that. And then even like what you said, just employers are going to look at academics, but they're also going to look at your social skills, because you got to work with a lot of other individuals. If you're working for a very large firm, again, how do you interact with a lot of different dynamic individuals, all that. So that's going to help out with it. But again, you're creating your own brand, and you want to have something that recruiters can remember you by, and you want to leave some value of uniqueness to them. And that way, when they go back that night or the next day and put you in their system, they go, oh, there's this lady, oh, there's this guy. I remember they plug that in. So you want to have those things that really define you, and they can remember you.
Ashley's welcome to come over to the top and say, no, that's not how it works. But I would say, I would encourage you, kind of what you described, to use those to tell the story as to who you are. I interview all the time. Unfortunately, I have to do a bunch of phone interviews, and it's very hard. The reality is you don't hire and you don't work with competencies, you don't work with accolades, you don't work with validation. You work with people that are in a shared mission on your team trying to do the same thing. So the quickest thing I'm trying to do is get to figure out what's behind that person, what would be a good fit for them within the company, how could I put them in a spot to succeed, do they have what it takes to be here, are they truly interested, do they have the passion to be there. So any portion of that resume that can tell a story that then you can continue, and when we have that dialogue, it's a huge help when you're on the other side.
Great point. Yeah, if it was about just the GPA or just the major, we would have employers contacting us and saying, give me all your 4.0 finance majors. That's all I want to hire. We're only going to talk to them. We're just going to take the top. That's not how it works, right? Really important to be able to share that story and share that brand. It's an advanced skill to know what that brand is and be able to communicate it. Really important.
How do you integrate talking about your brand while also remaining like academic and talking about your future in the industry and the job?
So I actually had a learning from that. The way I see it is I was always super ambitious since like freshman year. I felt like I checked all the boxes, like I would be involved in organizations, did all this. And I saw myself going to recruiters and literally just like listing everything I've done. Like, I've had this experience, I've done this. Like, honestly, like those are relevant. And once you're in an interview, you're going to talk all about that. And they're going to see it on your resume. The first point of contact is all about, like, I see it almost as like speed dating. You want to see if you're a perfect match. Just as much as the company wants to like see if you're a match for them, you want to see if they're a match for you as well. So it's all about like that person, that recruiter is representing what the company stands for. So it's all about like that connection. So I would say like have an icebreaker, like talk about, I don't know, the weather was really bad today. I remember I talked about that like my junior year. Something to like a little bit more sociable in terms of like your brand and who you stand for, like your passions, everything. And then you'll start to get into your experiences when they're relevant in the topic. I think that's the thing that I have learned the most is you don't really need to prove yourself in a sense of like, you're not a like personal version of your resume. You don't have to like just spill it all out. They'll come as relevancy throughout naturally with the conversation. So just like act normal, like as you were meeting anybody else, of course in a professional setting. But I think they just come naturally when you're talking about your experiences, and they'll ask more about it.
Hopefully they're going to take your resume or you're going to apply online. So they're going to see all the great things you did. But what you can tell them in person is, what does it mean to you? Why did you pick these things and not something else? There's a motivation behind getting involved and staying involved in that thing. And then also connect the dots, especially the underclassmen in the room. You probably have experience working at places like Zaxby's and Subway, and you're thinking, how do I possibly go up and talk to Boeing about my experience being a barista? There's some skills there, there's transferable skills there, but if you don't pull those out, you are hoping that the employers are going to assume you have those skills. And then you're leaving things up to chance. So it's your job to pull those pieces out, rather than just verbally assault your listener with every single thing you've ever done.
When I'm talking with a recruiter or someone like that, what if my experience has nothing to do with my intended major or my intended career path? How would I integrate that into my speech with them, or should I just leave it out entirely?
The way I would say, and I see this from even internships in the past that I've had with people, that sometimes internships tells you exactly what you want to do. Sometimes it tells you the complete opposite. And this is just an example with an internship, but this can go on, like maybe you can talk about like, oh, I did this experience and that led me to find an interest in this, or how did you find that interest? So how are you making that shift, but make sure it's kind of like transitioning. So, oh, I did this, I had this experience, and that led me to want to learn more about this, which has led me to be interested in, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a path, but I would definitely mention it, especially if it's something, even if you've had experiences with other things. And that happens a lot where I work at the Business Career Center with Ashley, and a lot of students, they come with their resumes and like, oh, I've been a bodyguard. Like, that's not relevant experience. I'm like, I'm sure you got communication, like skills on communication, on leadership, on customer experience. Like, there's so many things you can get out of it. You just need to know how to like connect those dots. So if you can connect those dots, even if your experience is not where you're interested at, I'm sure you'll be fine. But you should definitely like highlight that.
Yeah, it's kind of all about how you like spin things like into like different aspects onto how you learn, so that it, like if you're going into supply chain, like how you learn how to be a cashier and then spin it into something that can help you into supply chain, you know?
I would try to keep the other side engaged too. I fully agree with that point. So if there's an accounting major in here that wants to move into sales, talking through why the interest is there, why they think their skill set's there, but then maybe at that point inquiring with me to say, hey, here's a career goal, here's why I think I would be a fit, but I'm open to find out where those gaps would be and what you would recommend to fill those in. It's very possible now that I've seen kind of the talent side, I've gotten to know the person, I may say, there are gaps that exist that I could work you through during the onboarding process and you'd be ready today. I might give you feedback to say, there's a gap there that you're going to have to gain some experience before you come to that team. But I can promise you, being on the other side of the table, you engaging me and letting you talk through that, and then me getting to assess kind of your feedback and what you think about that is going to give me a much different experience than an accounting major that spends 29 of the 30 minutes demonstrating to me why they're ready for a sales role that I'm not certain they know exactly what it is and what it takes and why people are successful. So I'd recommend trying to demonstrate your interest or capabilities, but then also get some feedback around what the recruiter's thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about what you're learning, talk about what you're working on, and those are indirect ways that kind of create that conversation, but also show what your interests are. And that way it kind of opens up that open dialogue. And one of the things that people will say is that, you know, if you're looking for a job, you can tell them that you're looking for a job, but what you're really doing is you're like, hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity. I'm learning about this, and this. I know about that, and that. And then, you know, that might create some open dialogue that way. So it's a passive way, but it's also kind of direct. And you're telling them what you know, what you're working on, and that might create a conversation that spurs into something else.
I'll say too, if you're interested in going into sort of like a niche industry, something like film entertainment, sports, something like that, a lot of the curriculum you're learning in the classroom is not specific there, right? So if you're trying to go down a little bit of a niche path, you need to supplement. Supplement with your student orgs and your experiences, supplement with study abroad experiences, and then also supplement with things like certificates, things that you can do online in training. So I have a supply chain student who very intentionally picked supply chain because she felt like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna shoot for my dream, which is working in the film industry. But if that doesn't pan out, I've got some other options and I'm gonna be okay. So she did not major in film. I hope no one from the College of Comms listening. I'm a College of Comm grad, College of Comm's good. But she felt a little bit more secure in the supply chain role. But how is she getting that content knowledge that she's not getting by not being in the College of Comm? So she works for the Daily Collegiate. She did a study abroad experience at the Cannes Film Festival 2 times. She has certificates in things like Adobe Premiere and InDesign, the whole suite. She knows how to graphic design. She owns photography business, right? So she is building those skills to make this really compelling package now of, I kind of like her more as a supply chain major with all this cool stuff than as a straight film major. She's creating her own unique story, right? And that's the beauty of Penn State. You've got a lot of options here.
And I'll just finalize by saying too, when I was at Target, they would call them the unicorns. The unicorns is when they're looking for somebody to hire and they see that you have an experience that, for example, they are not even looking for. So, example, I speak Spanish. I never thought that was going to be helpful at all, but they were looking for somebody to work with multicultural. I didn't even know they were looking for that. Never thought that my interests would align with the experiences I've had. What they call a unicorn is somebody who has a different experience in something completely, like something out of anything related to business, but that could actually be perfect for that position. So sometimes an experience you've had that you think will never be relevant can actually be the most relevant and actually put you like on top just because of that experience you've had. So I would just not discourage. If you have a passion for something or anything like that, like you can use it for your benefit. It's not like something, it's not relevant.
I think you've hit on a really good point. So if you're networking, one of the things I would recommend is try to make your ask achievable for the other side. So supply chain, if you're narrow there, I know enough to be dangerous about supply chain, but if your ask to me is to get you a job or give you guidance based on my background, quite frankly, you're probably going to be 3-4 years here with more knowledge from an academic standpoint around supply chain. I mean, I might have some practical tips to help you with. Get those tips from me, but also have the ask, hey, if I'm going for a niche, whether it's sports or supply chain, do you know anybody or do you have any contacts? Because if that's your ask to me, I sure do. My neighbor's daughter went to Arizona State for supply chain. She probably started there 7 years ago. She's been with Dell 3 years ago, specific to supply chain. I know a couple people in my industry specific that I guarantee would like to talk to a Penn State alum. I can make that connection, but if you ask me for a job or specific guidance to supply chain, I wouldn't help you at all if you'd asked me for that. And if you asked me the first one, I may not have thought to connect the dots. So try to keep it achievable for your audience.
I like that. Keep it achievable for the audience. It's that two-way process, right?
Do you have any advice for how to enter a conversation, especially for like a freshman or a sophomore, without being too aggressive, but also being like confident enough?
Probably exactly what she said earlier, just like, hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm a freshman. I was hoping to just get some advice because I'm really interested in this company. Just something like light, but show them that you're interested in what they do and kind of learning more for like your next like following years. Yeah.
And I think the good advice too is like, I know we talk about the elevator pitch and everything, but I really like when it's like question and answer. I just feel like the conversation flows a little bit better and I get to learn more about them. So that way, when something relevant about me that connects with them, makes it a lot more powerful for you to like differentiate yourself from others. So for example, you go in, hi, how's your day going? How's your experience at Penn State so far? Can you tell me a little bit more of the role that you have in the company? They'll start talking, you're like, oh, interesting. I am actually really interested in this. I've done this in the past, this experience. So kind of like you start kind of relating with that person a little bit more. That's kind of like my personal view on it. I like to just make connections in terms of like actually like having a dialogue instead of just saying, hi, this is my major, this is what I do, this is, I don't know. Yeah, I prefer like that.
Prepare. So
Yeah.
do your homework ahead of time. So if you know it's going to be me, which I would recommend you go to the very first day there, more insight for you. But like if I'm your target, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on Facebook. Facebook, I don't even know you scrolling on my page. You're gonna know everything about me and my kids. You're gonna know I'm gonna be at the Idaho game on Saturday. And it's gonna give you a feel for the audience and let you have some cracks during that conversation. If you don't have that luxury, know who the individual is, know something about the company, reach out and let them know why company A tugged at you and you're interested in being there and you're excited to learn more about what they do. But without that background knowledge, I've been at this for a while. I'm a sales guy, so I can generally chat. I'm just as lost as you in that conversation. It's gonna be really hard without any context to draw on. So do your homework ahead of time.
Lily mentioned before, it is like speed dating. So companies want to feel special too. They want to know that you specifically want to speak with them, that role, that something you value in that company. So that's why that research is so important. They know you want a job. You don't want to appear like you're so desperate you'll take any job. You want their job. You want them specifically, right? So it's an important piece of the pie.
And I really liked what you said about being prepared. Like, I think if you go to Anyline Careers, a lot of the jobs are already there. So, for example, I'm just saying, like, PepsiCo has the sales job, and you're like, oh, I'd be interested in that. I'm interested in sales. See what go in, see what the sales job is. And when you talk to a recruiter, you're like, oh, I saw there's a position for sales. I'm really interested in that. They're like, oh, this person actually did the research, looked for it, is interested in it, and like kind of explain why. So, being prepared. Look at the company's values, see if they align with yours, and also if there's any positions open already that you're already interested, because that will really show them that you're already like really interested in them, and it's not like you're just like scheming through the career fair and you're like, oh, this seems open, like I'll talk to them,
That helps you determine perhaps what type of content you're sharing about your background experience, things that live on your resume. If a company in their job posting really is emphasizing creativity, you might share a little bit of a different story with them in a networking or a career fair conversation than if they were emphasizing problem solving, right? So it's helping be more on point.
Yeah. How many companies at the career fair do you think we should talk to? Like as many as we're interested in, or like is there a certain like number or what?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I talked to like 5 or 6 last year.
I think it really depends on you. Depends how much time you have. I would say also if they have the roles you're looking for, because if like for me, I wanted to go in towards like brand management, which is really like a niche, especially if you don't have an MBA yet. So for me, it was really looking for those companies that would have a role within that, because I didn't want to really like lose the time with the recruiter in mind at the same time. So if it's a company you're really not interested in and you were just gonna talk to them, I would go with the ones you're actually like genuinely interested, because they'll see that too, and it's like they'll see your personality with it and everything. So
Yeah, I mean, they know whether you're truly interested or not.
Yeah,
I mean, there's 2 ways. I mean, you just jump in and you're like, these are the 5 I want to talk to. You do your research and all that. But there might be 1 or 2 where you're like, well, maybe I need to like practice a little bit, and that's a good time to like talk to 2 people or 2 different businesses. And you're like, okay, I'm going to talk to these 2, and maybe that's where you kind of scroll, you Google it real quick, and you go over, and you just kind of practice, because it's about repetition. And what you do this year to the following year and so forth, you're going to get a lot more smoother, and the repetition is really going to help you. So, you could, do your focus 5 first, and then, you get more repetition if you have that time. But if you have time to spare, I think talk to as many as you can. There might be other, businesses out there or companies that you're like, wow, I never really thought there would be a nice alignment. And there's times, and I've seen it here at the career fair, where they are also looking for someone, and the job isn't posted, it's not on the literature, but you might basically knock on the door or visit their table, and you find out that, hey, there's this position for you that you weren't even aware of.
Yeah, and even if like the company is a company you're interested for, I remember I was really interested in L'Oreal, and I went to talk to the recruiter just generally because I wanted to know more about like the company culture, because I knew they didn't recruit for marketing at Penn State. But after talking to him, he actually said, oh, I'm going to send your picture to a marketing recruiter, even though they weren't here. So even if it's a company you're really interested in, maybe just talk about the company itself or the industry. If it's an industry you're interested in, it's always good to know, even for you, like even if they're not even recruiting, for your own company, and they're not come here for that, even if you want to know about them. It's always good to go.
I will say too, when it comes to the application piece, and I just had this conversation with a student the other day, don't count yourself out, especially women. We won't apply to something unless we believe we meet 90% of the qualifications in the job posting. For men, they'll throw their hat in the ring if there's 40% of the qualifications they believe they meet. Throw your hat in the ring. If it interests you, go for it. Now, if it explicitly says we are only hiring finance majors with a 3.8, well, that's pretty clear who should be throwing their hat in the ring. But if it says, you know, you're on some L'Oreal website, not internal to Penn State, and it says looking for 1 to 2 years of experience, problem-solving skills, someone with leadership experience, and you're thinking, well, I'm just a college senior. I've got internships. Do they count that as experience? And, you know, president of an organization, do they count that as leadership? Throw your hat in the ring. It counts. Go for it. The worst that can happen is nothing, right? Go for it.
Yeah, that's something I really learned too, is the worst thing that could happen is just get a no. And it's not
Or
even,
nothing.
or nothing. You won't even know.
Crickets.
And you really shouldn't take it as personally, because sometimes it's something else. They found somebody else. It's a budget issue. You don't align with the culture in general, so like you wouldn't even be happy with the culture to start with. And also, like, I remember from my sophomore internship, one of the requirements was to be a junior, and it was an online application. I was like, well, I already have my resume. Might as well just send it and see what happens. And I actually ended up getting it. So sometimes, like, the worst thing that could happen is they'll see you're interested and you won't get it, and you can apply the next year. That's the worst thing that could happen. So I remember sophomore year, I applied to like 15 companies or more and got rejected. To the other 14 didn't even interview, but it's a process. Like, you learn from it. So
My HR team would probably kill me for saying that. We're hiring for like a sales ops position that is going to help us with proposals out to customers, or we're hiring for a salesperson. If I'm interviewing, I don't necessarily know what those 10 qualifications or requirements are. I'm looking for somebody that I think is going to be a great fit on a team that can help us with proposals. Or I'm
Somebody
looking for
you wanna
somebody
work
that I
with.
think is going to be a great fit that's going to fit in with the team. So I wouldn't necessarily get hung up on that. I'd be mindful of them, but I would really try to understand the guts of what they're looking for and determine if you think you're a fit, if it's something you would enjoy, and then it becomes up to you to see if it'd be a fit on the other end.
It's a two-way relationship. You don't want to get that job with a company that you want. They're not really sure of you. You're both tied in together. So it's going to be a two-way relationship.
We're just about out of time. I want to see if there's one last question for the greater good. I know our panelists will hang around if you want to introduce yourself or exchange information or ask any one-on-one questions. Is there any last question for the greater good? Of course, no one's going to ask because they don't want to be that person, right? Yeah, I like it.
Like as a freshman, and like if you go to like a career fair and you see like a company that you potentially want to work with, like how often should you keep in touch with that company, and like what do you say to like your question?
I like talking a lot. So the way I would say is a person with a reason, or at least like a reason why you're contacting them. So if you're only like, hi, just want to like check how things are going and everything, like that might be a little bit too much. But if there's a reason, like for example, I know this recruiter from Unilever in sophomore year, and I'm like looking for options, see how it goes. I'm talking to her again right now, but I bring back what we've done in the past, catch up with what things are going on, and then I ask her if there's any like any opening positions for full-time employees or anything like that. I like throw in like a question. So make sure there's a reason why you're contacting that recruiter, everything like that. Sometimes even if you want to talk like, oh, I found this like interesting article that I know you're working with this brand, or you're working with this role of this industry, something like that. But you need to make sure there's a reason or a motive to be contacting them, not only just like, oh, checking in. You know, I think that makes them more relevant. That's how I would say it.
I think that's good advice. My brother-in-law's worked for Unilever for 15 years. If you want to connect the dots, I'd be happy to. But
There you go,
if you're
networking.
reaching out
Networking
because
guys.
you saw an article that we were acquired, or that we made an acquisition, and you want to wish us well with that, reach out all the time. That's not an ask for me. If people are reaching out, I get a zillion emails of small companies that want to bolt onto our CRM, so our customer tool that we use. They want to take that and they want to become our interface. It's a big ask. They want me to do a WebEx constantly. I can't accommodate that, but if somebody wants to wish me well and they stay in touch and then their ask comes in a year and that's when they need something or want something, it's not gonna hurt if I saw something every couple months, and it's nice to have those connections out there. So I agree, make sure there's a reason, make sure there's a purpose. It would be odd if you just wish me a happy Halloween, but it would be very normal if you said, hey, you know, it looks like you guys are doing something in the industry, wish you the best with it, look forward to staying in touch. I will probably ask you how you're doing.
Yeah, I think using LinkedIn, social media, if, you know, I post something, you could always be like, hey, this is really neat, you know, tell me more about it, or, you know, you can like it or have some comments. That's always good. Thank you notes are good, so if you do talk to a recruiter, get their contact information, send them a thank you card. Handwritten is even better. And then again, you might see some relevancy. Maybe you find out that they're in an article or featured through Penn State, all the different ways. So you can say, hey, I noticed this, congratulations, or tell me a little bit more about what you're doing with this. And that way you can create some interactions. Maybe it's monthly or a couple months. If you do it every week or every day, it's a little creepy. But if you kind of have it spread out, then again, you're going in with some type of purpose and focus. It's always good.
Has to be intentional. Actually put something on your calendar. Reach out to so-and-so, you know, every so often.
Yeah.
And especially if you're getting feedback, let's say an employer says, ooh, you know, your GPA is just 0.05, a little bit too low. Come back to us when you finish that class, or let me know when you have a leadership position. We're looking for someone with a little bit more experience. Come back and talk to us then. Let them know, hey, by the way, I just finished accounting 211 and I got an A. You know, my GPA is through the roof, right? So you have that impetus to reach out. So I think we're about out of time. I appreciate really good questions, right? Good interaction. So our panelists will stay up here. I'm going to stop the recording so we're not speaking to the world here.